She Dwelt among the Untrodden Ways by William Wordsworth. Wordsworth was a romantic poet. That's romantic with a capital R, and not to be confused with Shaggy, who was in fact Mr. Romantic. Smooth, just like the silk. Soft and cuddly, hug me up like a quilt. I'm your lyrical lover, whose bombastic ways have very little to do with William Wordsworth, and the pair of them have absolutely nothing to do with the new romantics, whose existence, so far as I'm concerned, is a blight on the musical timeline. So what does romantic with an uppercase R mean, as opposed to romantic with a lowercase r, which is associated with the feelings of affection kindled by your lover on Valentine's Day? Capital R romantic was an artistic movement that spanned Europe between 1800s and 1850s. It revered the magnificence of nature and celebrated the feelings of awe, wonder and joy it provoked. The Romantics viewed the countryside as some sort of lost Eden that helped maintain the innocence and purity of those who lived and worked there. In contrast to the countryside, they considered the newly industrialised areas, the cities, to be degenerative and a corrupting influence on human behaviour. Now, that might seem a little bit naive to us, but there's some evidence to suggest that nature does exert a healing or restorative force on our psyches. So just as Britain was industrialising, or perhaps because Britain was industrialising, the Romantics and Wordsworth were signalling the virtues of country life. In terms of poetry, this meant that they often favoured the simple ballad form over the mock epics of the neoclassic poets. And the subject of Romantic poetry was often awe-inspiring nature or country people leading country lives, which segues nicely into She Dwelt among the Untrodden Ways. Besides being a ballad, it's an elegy, a lament for the dead. The poetic form is simple. 3 quatrains. A quatrain is a 4-line verse. Here the lines alternate between 8 and 6 syllables. It's mainly written in iambic rhythm with an A-B, A-B, C-D, C-D, E-F, E-F rhyme scheme. The poem is split into 3 verses. The opening verse describes the isolated and untouched area in which she lived and her isolated and untouched life. The second verse uses natural imagery to describe her unremarkable beauty, and the final one, her death and its effect on the speaker. As the title suggests, the subject of the poem led a natural or simple life among the untrodden ways, far from the corrupting influence of the industrialised cities. But if we look a little bit closer, Wordsworth has included some twists and turns on the untrodden tracks. That's an alliterative tongue twister. The opening line, for example, is 9 syllables long, not 8. It would scan much better without the. Listen. She dwelt among untrodden ways, besides the springs of Dove, a maid whom there were none to praise, and very few to love. That maintains an iambic rhythm throughout the verse, but Wordsworth has snuck in an unnecessary syllable to break the flow. It now reads, She dwelt among the untrodden ways. It's clumsy. It's not the work of a master wordsmith. Or is it? What's Big Willie up to? It's as if he's using the meter or rhythm to say, when you're off the beaten path and you look closely, you'll find all sorts of unusual and beautiful things. Oh, you sly old dog, William Wordsworth. Right, let's take his advice and look closely. The next line states, She dwelt beside the springs of Dove, a river that flows through the Peak District in central England. Water is essential for life, and so in literature it often becomes a symbol of life. In fact, this person dwells so close to the vital energy of life. In fact, it's more than close. Wordsworth could have written beside the banks of Dove. It's the same syllable count, the same meter, and perhaps more obvious, but he didn't. He wrote the springs of Dove, the source of the river, where it bubbles out of the ground. A distant and isolated, but also pure and vital place. Could that be a symbol for the maid he introduces in the next line? Of course, A maid is an unmarried girl or a young woman, someone fresh and pure, at least in the eyes of the speaker. And then comes the next twist. A maid whom there were none to love and none to praise and very few to love. There's something odd about those lines. None to praise, well, the meaning there is clear enough. And very few to love? Hang on, it doesn't say none to love. Very few suggests at least someone loved her. Could the speaker of the poem be the person who loved her, but did not declare his love, never praised her? The final verse certainly indicates the maid had a very powerful impact on the speaker. The poem is not only about the beauty of the maid, but the regret the speaker feels at her death due to the unspoken love or undeclared admiration. The second quatrain, Wordsworth uses natural imagery to describe the girl's simple, unaffected beauty. The trick here lies in the choice of flower Wordsworth uses to symbolise her beauty. He doesn't plump for an orchid, which is a highly cultivated flower and requires a lot of attention to bloom. He doesn't even opt for a rose, which is the traditional symbol of love and passion. Instead, he chooses a violet for his symbol, a common flower in springtime in England and one whose simple beauty is easy to miss when hidden amongst nature's riches. Oh, hang on, isn't that just like the maid? A similar image is used in the next two lines of this stanza. Fair as a star when only one is shining in the sky. At first glance that seems like a backhanded compliment, as if the speaker is saying the maid is only outstanding when there's nothing to compare her to. If this is his idea of wooing, it's easy to see why he kept his mouth shut in the opening verse. However, it's more likely to be a continuation of the flower image. Her natural beauty is easy to miss, like one star among many, but when singled out, it's obvious. Wordsworth draws attention to her beauty just as he did with the Untrodden, by subtly breaking the rhythm again. He shifts the emphasis from the second syllable to the first. Fair as a star. I think Wordsworth is suggesting there is beauty everywhere if we look carefully. The final stanza suggests her death, like her life, went unnoticed by the majority of people. Few could know when Lucy ceased to be. Again, that word few, not none, somebody noticed. The last two lines shift the perspective from the life and death of the girl to the feelings of the speaker. We can infer from Wordsworth's Euphus Caesura that the final exclamation mark that the speaker is suffering feelings of loss and grief at her death. But she is in her grave, and oh, the difference to me. That's a great little poem. The simplicity of the ballad belies the complexity of ideas found in it. It suggests the natural environment is full of beauty, but we need to learn how to look for it. And it explores the sadness of unspoken love that is compounded by the grief that's felt when the object of our affection dies. Oh dear. So that, I guess, brings us to the final question. Who is Mr. Ro-mantic? Shaggy, who sings about himself, or Wordsworth, who writes about someone else? That I'm not sure, so you'll have to decide for yourself. That was She Dwelt Among the Untrodden Ways, and this is Think, Think, Ink, thanking you.